I'm 32 years old. Before everything went sideways, my existence was pretty straightforward and predictable in the best way possible. I had a solid career, owned my own home, and was planning a future that made sense. The main character in this mess, besides yours truly, is my former fiancée, Delilah, who was 30 when this all went down. Looking back now, I can see warning signs I probably should have paid more attention to. But hindsight is always clearer than the moment you're living in. We'd been a couple for 4 years total, with the last 12 months spent as an engaged pair. Our living situation was in a house I'd bought before popping the question. The deed had only my signature on it, which was a practical choice based on my financial position and some money my family had kicked in. Delilah hadn't really been a major factor in my life when I made that purchase. She moved into my place roughly 2 years after we started dating. I want to be clear about this because it becomes relevant later. The house was mine, purchased with my money, and she was essentially living there as my partner, not as a co-owner or even a tenant in the legal sense. She knew this from day one, and it was never an issue between us until everything fell apart. The other players in this disaster include Delilah's previous boyfriend, a guy named Trevor. He was her partner before I came along, and according to her version of events, their relationship crashed and burned because he couldn't keep it in his pants. She'd told me stories about discovering his cheating, about the lies he'd told, about how devastated she'd been. I'd listened, sympathized, and honestly thought I was the guy who'd helped her move past all that trauma. Also relevant are Delilah's folks and her kid sister Beatrice, who eventually got pulled into the drama, or at least became aware of what was happening. Beatrice turned out to be surprisingly level-headed about the whole situation, which I appreciated later on. From my perspective, our foundation seemed rock solid. We'd connected through someone we both knew, dated exclusively for about a year, before combining households, then another 2 years passed before I got down on one knee. Everything appeared to be constructed on common ground and what I understood to be reciprocal respect. We had similar values, enjoyed each other's company, and rarely fought about anything significant. I genuinely believed we were building something lasting. Delilah knew exactly what my financial picture looked like. The house, for example, came from my savings combined with inheritance money from my grandparents. It was a 3-bedroom place in the suburbs, comfortable, and definitely sufficient for what we needed and what we'd planned for the future, which involved getting married and maybe having kids down the road. We talked about turning one bedroom into a nursery eventually, about hosting family holidays, about growing old together in that house, all the normal stuff couples discuss when they're planning a life together. Delilah chipped in for the day-to-day expenses like electricity, water, and food, but she had zero ownership stake in the actual property. This arrangement was transparent, established from the beginning, and never disputed by either of us. She seemed perfectly content with it, never once suggesting she wanted her name on the deed or that she felt insecure about the arrangement. It was just how things were, and it worked for both of us. Trevor, her ex, was someone from her history that I knew existed. She'd been pretty forthcoming that their relationship had run for approximately 2 years before ending badly when she discovered his serial cheating. She'd mentioned multiple times how much pain and betrayal he'd inflicted on her. I figured this was ancient history, something she'd worked through and left behind, especially considering we were engaged and building a life together. I mean, who goes back to someone who cheated on them repeatedly? That was my thinking at the time anyway. Turns out I was wrong about that assumption. About 6 months before the main event, I started picking up on subtle changes in Delilah's patterns and the things she talked about. Trevor's name, which used to be rarely mentioned and only in the context of past hurt, began appearing more frequently in conversation, though initially in ways that seemed casual enough. She'd mentioned catching one of his social media updates or hearing something about him through some distant mutual connection, little comments here and there that individually seemed harmless. At first, I didn't think much of it. Sometimes people from your past just drift back into your awareness, especially with social media making the world smaller. But these references kept increasing in frequency. She started talking about hypothetical scenarios related to her past, sometimes comparing different life choices she'd made. There was this growing restlessness in her that I couldn't quite identify. She became more withdrawn, glued to her phone more often, frequently appearing lost in thought or distracted. I'd catch her staring off into space, and when I'd ask what she was thinking about, she'd snap back to reality and say nothing important. When I'd ask if something was wrong after these episodes, she'd typically give me some vague reassurance or blame it on stress from her job or just being tired. I wanted to believe her because, honestly, who wants to think their fiancé is having doubts? You tell yourself it's just a phase, that everyone gets pre-wedding jitters, that it'll pass. I was an idiot for not pushing harder. But I also didn't want to be that controlling, paranoid partner who interrogates their significant other about every mood shift. Things escalated about 3 months before she dropped the bomb on me. She told me that Trevor had reached out to her directly. According to Delilah, he'd contacted her with an apology for his previous behavior, claiming he felt genuine remorse and insisting he'd undergone significant personal growth. She said the contact surprised her but also made her curious. She framed it as needing closure, wanting to hear what he had to say. The way she described it, he'd sent this long, heartfelt message about how he'd been in therapy, how he'd realized what he'd lost, how he'd become a better person. I remember suggesting that closure is usually something you find internally, rather than seeking it from the person who hurt you. But I didn't tell her she couldn't communicate with him. I believe that in a relationship built on trust, controlling who someone can talk to wasn't my role, though I definitely expressed my discomfort given their history. I told her I trusted her judgment, but that I thought engaging with him was probably not the best idea. She assured me it was just about getting closure, nothing more. She said she needed to hear him out to finally put that chapter of her life to rest. I reluctantly accepted this explanation, though something in my gut told me this wasn't going to end well. Over the following weeks, it became obvious that their communication wasn't a one-time thing. Delilah would be texting late into the night, sometimes leaving the room to take phone calls. When I confronted this, she admitted they'd been talking more regularly. She described Trevor as being very convincing, presenting himself as a reformed person who deeply regretted his past mistakes. She started bringing up things they used to share, trips they'd taken together, old private jokes between them. It was like she was reassessing her past relationship with him not as a source of pain anymore, but through this new, more nostalgic filter. The clear warning sign that we had a serious problem was when she began making comparisons between Trevor and me, or more precisely, between her relationship with Trevor and what she had with me. She started expressing this feeling that she'd missed out on a certain type of excitement or passion, which she subtly connected to her time with Trevor. She'd say things like, our life was comfortable and stable, but then follow it up with wondering whether comfort and stability were sufficient for her long-term happiness. This was alarming because these were supposedly qualities we'd both valued. We'd talked about wanting a stable, drama-free relationship. We'd both said we were done with the chaos and uncertainty of our 20s. But now she was acting like stability was boring, like maybe she'd settled for something safe instead of something exciting. I attempted to address these concerns directly with her, asking what had changed and what she felt was absent from our relationship. Her answers were frequently contradictory. She'd claim she loved me and valued our life together, but then immediately voiced doubts about her own feelings and future contentment, often bringing up Trevor in these what-if scenarios. It became clear she was either deeply conflicted or being pulled back into an old pattern. The week before she requested the break, she went to meet Trevor for coffee. She informed me about it beforehand, presenting it as an innocent meeting to finally achieve that closure she kept talking about. I didn't argue, but I made it clear I wasn't comfortable with it, particularly given her recent behavior and expressed uncertainties. She went anyway. When she came back, she was distant and evasive, offering very few specifics about their conversation, only mentioning it was interesting and that Trevor had apparently matured considerably. The atmosphere in our home became tense over the next several days. The conversation that changed everything happened on a Saturday morning. I'd made plans for us to spend the day together, maybe go hiking in an attempt to reconnect. Before we could even start these plans, sitting in the same room where we'd discussed wedding arrangements and our future, she launched into it. She started by saying how much she appreciated me and the life we'd constructed together. Then she shifted into her internal struggle, explaining she was confused about her feelings. She brought up Trevor again, saying that reconnecting with him had awakened old emotions and made her question whether she'd made an error leaving him. Or more specifically, whether she should investigate if there was still something between them now that he claimed to be a changed man. Then came the actual request. She asked for a break from our relationship. She was specific about it. She wanted some time, a few weeks, possibly a month or two, to explore her connection with Trevor. She suggested she could crash with her sister Beatrice or find a temporary place during this period. She wanted to date Trevor to determine if what she was experiencing was genuine or just nostalgia. She emphasized that she didn't want to end things with me definitively, but that she needed this space and freedom to figure out her heart, to be certain before we got married. She even suggested that this exploration would ultimately make her a better partner for me, or confirm that Trevor was truly a mistake, thereby strengthening our relationship in the long run. She asked for my understanding and patience. I listened to her entire proposition without interrupting. Internally, what I processed was a request from my fiancée to suspend our engagement and our shared life so she could test drive a relationship with an ex-boyfriend who had previously betrayed her. The finality of her request, from where I stood, was immediate. While she was framing it as a temporary pause for exploration, I interpreted it as a fundamental violation of what our engagement represented. When she finished, I didn't launch into a lengthy debate or beg. I asked a few clarifying questions to make sure I understood the parameters of her request, specifically that she intended to actively pursue a romantic and likely physical relationship with Trevor during this break. She confirmed this was her intention, stating it was the only way to truly know. My immediate response was calm and direct. I told her that if she felt she needed to explore a relationship with another man, then our relationship was, for all practical purposes, finished. I stated that I wouldn't be a placeholder, nor would I participate in a scenario where our commitment was suspended for her to experiment elsewhere. I told her I wouldn't be sitting around waiting for her to choose between me and her cheating ex. I explained that her request itself demonstrated a profound lack of respect for me and for the vows we were planning to exchange. I told her that I considered our engagement and relationship terminated, effective immediately. She seemed shocked, perhaps expecting negotiation or emotional begging from me. She tried to argue that I was misunderstanding her intentions, that it was about her confusion, not about a lack of love for me. I reiterated that her desire to explore a relationship with another man was in itself the end of ours. Delilah was visibly stunned by my position. She attempted to backpedal, suggesting maybe a break wasn't necessary or that we could discuss it more. But the request had been made and the underlying sentiment was crystal clear to me. I told her that the trust and commitment I believed we shared were irreparably broken by her proposal. I stated that since she needed space to explore things with Trevor, I would ensure she had all the space she needed. I told her she needed to arrange to move her stuff out of the house. I suggested she should probably proceed with her plan to stay with her sister or find a place, because she wouldn't be living with me anymore. That same Saturday afternoon, after she left the house, in a state of distress to presumably process everything or go to her sister's place, I started taking action. My decision wasn't made in anger, but with cold clarity. The relationship was over. The future we'd planned was canceled. Therefore, the logical steps were to dismantle the infrastructure of that shared life. My first move was contacting a locksmith. Within a few hours, every lock on the house was changed. I owned the house. It was my property. She had no legal claim to it. Some people might think this was harsh, but I saw it as necessary. The house was being sold. I didn't want any drama or surprise visits. And frankly, she'd made her choice. She wanted freedom to explore other options, so I was giving her complete freedom from me and everything we'd built. My second move, executed over the remainder of that weekend, was preparing the house for sale. This involved clearing out some of Delilah's more easily removable personal items that were mixed with mine in common areas. Clothing, toiletries, a few decorative pieces. I boxed these up carefully and stored them in the garage, planning to arrange for her to pick them up. I wasn't vindictive about it. I didn't throw her stuff out or damage anything. I just wanted it organized and ready for her to collect so we could both move on. I also started decluttering and depersonalizing the space to make it more attractive to potential buyers. Every photo of us came down. Every shared decoration got packed away. I wanted the house to look like a blank slate, which felt appropriate given that's what my life was about to become. I contacted a highly recommended real estate agent Monday morning. I explained the situation briefly. I was single, needed to sell the property quickly due to a new job opportunity I'd be pursuing, which was potentially true since I immediately started activating my professional network for positions in other states and wanted a fast, straightforward sale. The agent was efficient and had the property listed within days. The market conditions favored sellers, and the agent was confident we'd get offers quickly. I priced it aggressively below market value because speed mattered more to me than squeezing out every dollar. I wanted out, and I wanted out fast. Simultaneously, I initiated a search for new employment in a different state. I'd been passively considering a career change for some months before this, wanting new challenges, and this situation provided the catalyst. I updated my resume, reached out to contacts, and applied for several positions in a city on the opposite coast that offered strong opportunities in my industry and a complete environmental change. I wasn't running away, exactly. I was making a strategic decision to start fresh somewhere that held no memories of Delilah, no reminders of what I'd thought my future would look like. Somewhere I could rebuild without constantly being reminded of what had happened. The shared cloud storage we used for photos, documents, and backups was another focus point. It contained years of our shared memories. I downloaded my own files and photos, anything that was exclusively mine or that I had rights to. Then, I systematically removed her access and subsequently deleted the shared folders and content that was predominantly ours. It was a digital severing. Some might say I should have left those memories intact, but I didn't see the point. Why keep digital reminders of a relationship that had ended so badly? Why preserve photos of a future that was never going to happen? It felt cleaner to just wipe it all away and start fresh. I communicated with Delilah minimally. When she contacted me demanding to know why the locks were changed, I informed her via text message that our relationship was over, the house was being sold, and she needed to arrange a time with my realtor or a designated friend of mine to collect her boxed belongings. I didn't engage in further discussion or arguments. I stated that all necessary communication would henceforth be purely logistical. No emotions, no debates, no rehashing of who said what or who was right or wrong, just facts and logistics. She was, as expected, furious and distraught. She accused me of being heartless and impulsive. She insisted she'd only been confused and that my actions were an overreaction. She sent me long text messages about how I was throwing away 4 years over a misunderstanding, how she'd never actually said she didn't love me, how I was being cruel and vindictive. I didn't debate this with her. My decision was made. I'd heard what I needed to hear when she asked for permission to sleep with her ex. Everything after that was just noise. The house, due to its location, condition, and an aggressive pricing strategy, received an offer within 2 weeks. It was a cash offer slightly below asking price, but with no complications, which I accepted. The closing was scheduled for 30 days later. During this period, Delilah's attempts to contact me escalated, involving calls, texts, and emails. I didn't respond to most of them. When her messages became abusive or overly emotional, I blocked her number and email address. I also blocked her on all social media platforms. I instructed my realtor to handle all communication regarding her belongings, which she eventually collected with her sister Beatrice present. I wasn't there during the collection. The sale of the house closed as scheduled, approximately 6 weeks after Delilah's request for a break. By that time, I'd already secured a promising job offer in the new state. The offer included a relocation package, which expedited my move. I sold some furniture, put essentials into storage, and packed my car. I moved across the country. The process was swift. I found a temporary apartment in the new city, started my new job, and began establishing a new life. I focused on my work, exploring the new city, and reconnecting with a couple of old university friends who lived nearby. I made a conscious effort not to dwell on the past relationship beyond the lessons learned about clear boundaries and deal breakers. It's now been about 8 months since I moved. I'm settled in my new job, which is challenging and rewarding. I've found a more permanent place to live. I am, for all practical purposes, doing okay. I wouldn't say I'm ecstatic or empowered by the events, but I'm functional, stable, and moving forward with my life as planned, albeit on a revised trajectory. The reason for this post, this venting or rambling as it might be, is due to the information that's been filtering back to me about Delilah's circumstances. This information has come primarily through 2 sources. Beatrice, Delilah's sister who contacted me a couple of months ago, and indirectly through mutual acquaintances from my old city with whom I still have very loose professional ties. According to Beatrice, and corroborated by other bits of information, Delilah's exploration with Trevor was short-lived and catastrophic. Trevor, true to his past behavior, apparently wasn't the reformed character he'd portrayed himself to be. He was reportedly still involved with other women or, quickly reverted to his old patterns once Delilah was available to him. He ended things with Delilah quite abruptly, about 2 months after she'd initiated her break with me. Beatrice mentioned he told Delilah he wasn't ready for anything serious and that he found her emotional state and expectations overwhelming. Following this, Delilah found herself in a difficult position. She'd given up her stable relationship with me. The house we'd lived in was sold. She'd been staying with Beatrice, but that arrangement became strained due to Delilah's emotional state and, according to Beatrice, Delilah's unwillingness to take responsibility for her decisions, often blaming me for overreacting or Trevor for deceiving her again. Delilah's parents also became involved. Beatrice told me that her parents were deeply disappointed in Delilah's actions. They'd apparently liked me and were looking forward to the wedding. They'd known about Trevor's unsuitability from Delilah's previous relationship with him. When they learned the full sequence of events, that Delilah had asked for a break to be with Trevor, that I had consequently ended the engagement and sold my house, they apparently took my side. They felt Delilah had thrown away a good future due to recklessness and poor judgment. They expressed their disapproval to Delilah directly. The next piece of information I received was that Delilah lost her job. The details are somewhat unclear, but it seems the emotional turmoil and instability in her personal life affected her performance and attendance at work. So she was jobless, with Trevor having dumped her, her relationship with her sister strained, her parents disapproving of her actions, and now unemployed. Delilah was, and apparently still is, effectively homeless or reliant on short-term charity from friends, as Beatrice eventually asked her to find alternative accommodation. Beatrice's initial contact with me was, she said, to apologize for Delilah's behavior and to express her and her parents' regret for how things turned out. She also wanted to ensure I was aware that they didn't condone Delilah's choices. It was a surprising conversation, and I mostly listened. Recently, the begging part has started. Delilah has been trying to reach me through various new channels, creating new social media profiles to send messages or trying to call from unknown numbers. The messages that have gotten through before I block the new avenue are apologies, pleas for a second chance, requests for help, sometimes financial, sometimes just wanting to talk. She's mentioned her difficult situation, her regret, and her supposed realization of the mistake she made. I'm not asking if I should take her back or help her. That door is closed, welded shut, and the entire building has been demolished. My actions were decisive, and I stand by them. I suppose the reason for writing all this down on Reddit like this is to just lay out the sequence of events and mostly to vent. I'm not seeking advice on how to interact with her. I have a clear policy of no contact. Update 1. About 3 weeks have passed since I made my original post. I've read a number of the comments and private messages. I appreciate the various perspectives and the time people took to read through the extensive account. Many users shared similar experiences or offered words of support for the stance I took. Several recurring questions and points for clarification emerged, which I'll address here. First, many asked about the specifics of the house. As stated, the house was 100% mine. I purchased it years before the engagement, using my own funds and an inheritance. Delilah's name was on no documents related to ownership. She contributed to some utilities and groceries, as would any cohabiting partner or roommate, but these contributions granted no equity or tenancy rights beyond that of a partner living in my home. When our engagement and relationship ended due to her stated intention to pursue another man, her basis for residing in my home was nullified. Regarding her belongings, I had them boxed and provided her with a reasonable opportunity to collect them, which she did, accompanied by her sister. There was no illegal eviction. She was asked to leave after she effectively terminated the foundation of our cohabitation. The locks were changed to secure my property during the sale process and after the definitive end of our relationship. Second, some questioned the immediacy of my decision. The conversation where Delilah asked for a break wasn't a brief, impulsive moment. It was the culmination of weeks of her increasing distance, her re-engagement with Trevor, and her expressed doubts about our relationship. Her request wasn't for space to think in solitude. It was specifically for space to explore a relationship with Trevor. She explicitly stated her intent to date and sleep with him. This wasn't a point of confusion for me. It was a clear statement of her priorities. My response was equally clear. I wasn't interested in being an option, a fallback plan, or worst, a doormat, as you guys call it. Third, Beatrice, Delilah's sister, was the first in the family to get a clearer picture. Delilah went to stay with Beatrice immediately after our conclusive conversation. Naturally, Beatrice asked Delilah what had happened. Delilah, from what Beatrice later relayed to me, initially tried to portray the situation as me overreacting to a simple request for space. However, under questioning from Beatrice, who knew her sister well, the full extent of the request, wanting to date Trevor, came out. Beatrice was and is very pragmatic. She knew Trevor's history and had apparently warned Delilah about reconnecting with him. Delilah's parents were informed by Beatrice and later by Delilah herself. Their siding with me was based on several factors. According to Beatrice, they'd always liked me and viewed me as a stable, reliable partner for Delilah. They were aware of Trevor's past betrayals and considered him a destructive influence. Delilah's decision to risk a secure future and an impending marriage for a chance to revisit a failed relationship with an untrustworthy individual was, in their eyes, an act of profound poor judgment. They didn't see my actions, ending the relationship and selling my house, as the cause of the problem, but rather as a direct consequence of Delilah's initial decision. Their disappointment was with her choices, not my reaction to them. Fourth, some found the speed of these actions surprising. I'm a planner by nature. Once a decision is made, I tend to execute it efficiently. The job search was an acceleration of pre-existing thoughts about career progression, and the situation with Delilah provided the immediate impetus. The housing market was, as mentioned, very active. I priced the house for a quick sale, preferring speed and certainty over maximizing every last dollar. The goal was a clean and rapid severance from the old life. My actions weren't driven by panic. In the weeks since my original post, Delilah's attempts to contact me continued for a while, then tapered off slightly after a particularly direct message. I had a mutual acquaintance, a former colleague I trust, who she'd also tried to contact to get to me, relay to her. I authorized this person to tell Delilah unequivocally that there was no possibility of reconciliation, no chance for discussion, and that any further attempts to contact me would be regarded as maltreatment. I also reiterated that I wished her no specific ill will, but that her life and her problems were her own to resolve, and I wouldn't be involved in any capacity. This was the only communication I've initiated, albeit indirectly. Since blocking her, I've continued to maintain no direct contact. I also took further steps to secure my privacy, changing my primary phone number, a hassle but necessary, and updating security settings on various personal accounts. It was a process of ensuring all ties were thoroughly severed. Through Beatrice, who provided one further unsolicited update about a week ago, I learned a few more details. Trevor, after dumping Delilah, apparently made it very clear to their mutual acquaintances that Delilah had been too intense and was living in the past. This, Beatrice said, further humiliated Delilah. Delilah's job situation didn't improve. She apparently had difficulties securing new employment, partly due to the circumstances of her previous job loss, rumored to be related to unprofessional conduct stemming from her personal issues, and possibly due to a lack of focus during job applications and interviews. The most significant piece of news from Beatrice was that Delilah had, for a brief period, attempted to stay with their parents. However, this arrangement also failed. According to Beatrice, Delilah's parents, while providing temporary shelter, were firm in their stance that Delilah needed to acknowledge her mistakes, seek professional help for her decision-making patterns, and take concrete steps to rebuild her life independently, rather than seeking a quick fix or someone to blame. Delilah apparently reacted poorly to this, leading to increased friction, and she left their home after a few weeks. Beatrice didn't know Delilah's exact whereabouts when she last spoke to me, only that she was temporarily staying with an old college friend and was still struggling. Significantly, Beatrice expressed her own distress and frustration with the situation, feeling caught in the middle, but also affirming that she and her parents believed Delilah needed to face the consequences of her actions to learn from them. She reiterated that they held no ill will towards me and wished me well. I thanked her for the information, but didn't invite further updates, hoping to draw a line under these incoming reports. My life is here now, and I'm focused on that. Update 2. It's now been approximately 6 months since my first update, making it around 7 months since my original post. A significant amount of time has passed, allowing for more developments or lack thereof in Delilah's situation and for my own life to further stabilize and progress in the new state. My own situation remains positive and stable. Work is going well. I've taken on more responsibility and am involved in some interesting projects. I've established a good routine, made a few new friends, and explored more of the surrounding area. The new city feels like home now. The events of last year, while significant, feel increasingly distant. I don't dwell on Delilah or the past relationship. My focus has been resolutely forward. I'm not in any new romantic relationship by choice, as I'm content with my current phase of life, focusing on professional growth and personal interests. Regarding Delilah, the information flow has thankfully significantly diminished. Beatrice has respected my implicit request to cease updates, and I've had no direct contact from Delilah or her family for several months. However, one piece of significant information did reach me indirectly about 2 months ago. The information came via a former colleague from my old city, the same one who had previously relayed my no-contact message to Delilah. He reached out for a professional query. I'd given him my new number and stated that he shouldn't leak it, and in the course of conversation, he hesitantly shared something he thought I might want to be aware of, prefacing it by saying he understood if I wasn't interested. He informed me that Delilah had, at some point in the preceding months, left the state. Apparently, after exhausting options with friends and with her family maintaining their stance, she decided to relocate, possibly to live with a distant relative in a different part of the country, or to try a completely fresh start where no one knew her or her recent history. He didn't have precise details, only that she was no longer in our old city or its vicinity. This news of her relocating didn't evoke any strong reaction in me. It seemed like a logical, if perhaps desperate, step for someone in her position. There have been no further attempts by Delilah to contact me since before my first update. At least none that have successfully reached me. My change of number and diligent blocking of any suspicious new accounts or unknown numbers seems to have been effective. My life has continued to move in a direction I've set. The sale of the house, the move, the new job. These were all decisions made to create a clean break and a new foundation, and those objectives have been met. This will likely be my final update on this matter, as there's little more to say from my perspective, and the information stream concerning Delilah has essentially dried up, which is my preference. The purpose of my original post was to document a sequence of events and actions, and that has been done.